All right, guys. So anyone,
First half, great first half. You must have been really pleased with the pressure you put on. There's a lot of pressure from the back line on the halfbacks.
Yeah.
It kind of just fell off. Just talk us through running out of steam, really.
Yeah. Well, not really happy with the first half, but I mean, nice to be in the game when the halftime whistle went, especially because we were like 28-10 down at one stage, looked like it'd run away from us. And the message was, let's not get them to start well after halftime. Let's not do what we did against Leinster. We gave them quick tries after halftime, and we just showed again some naivety there in terms of our understanding. Captain was very clear at halftime about also let's make sure the next 10 minutes are vital. And once, Northampton basically scored from the kickoff. They got a line out, and then they ran a great play. And they went and scored. So then it was catch-up time. And, you've seen in the Premiership, very difficult to play catch-up rugby against Northampton.
And some really good individual performance to take off. Seb de Klerk, Hanneken, and Swanepoel. All really came to the party.
Well, the interesting thing, Swanepoel's 24, I think. Seb's 24. Hannekom's 21. The Lockett played today. Number 5 is 19.
Yep.
And again, it's just the nature of what we have. A lot of our Springbok players are playing abroad, Japan, France, England. A lot of our seasoned pro players are playing abroad as well. And so, I said to Fulgasa now, and I said to the Northampton players in the change room, there's no right to come here and just win a game. You've got to pay your school fees. If I use an example like Racing Metro, they've lost 2 finals. They've always been there and thereabouts. They are an incredible club, great budget, and yet they can't get over the line. So it just shows you you're going to have to put a lot of yards in, and you're going to have to put a lot of time and effort in if you want to compete on this level.
Jay, is it difficult for the South African teams to compete in the URC as well as the ChampionsCup?
Yeah,
too difficult?
To be fair, guys, Leinster have been doing it. They didn't win anything last year either. And we're talking about a really crackerjack club team like Leinster. So, is it difficult? Of course it's difficult. You heard Courtney Law say to you now, which one do you want to win, the Premiership or the, when the semi-final? And I think his answer was 2 guys from Northampton were there whenever they were. So it just shows you how difficult it is. So I've got to stress, because I think people are reading it completely wrong. I'm not whinging about being here. I'm loving this competition. I'm loving the fact that we get exposed to this. I'm loving that these players can learn what they learned tonight. It is so close to Test rugby. Maybe the style varies a little bit because there's more attack in terms of what we saw tonight. Maybe a little bit more conservative and pragmatic at Test rugby, but the intensity, the sort of fight to win. The one thing I think our learnings for us as a group was not only did they score 59 points, they didn't even let us, get a try at the ending, and we were going through like 10, 15 phases. It was almost like, then they sort of put their foot down defensively. And that just shows you, if you want to become a great team, you're going to have an all-round game. So we want to be here. I've coached Super Rugby. I'm coaching in this competition. We want to be a powerful side that can every weekend run out and be competitive. And you need to serve your time. It's the second year we've been playing in this competition. For some guys, the first time they ever flew business class. Some guys, first time they've ever come overseas. And I'm not talking about this tour, but in the last 2 seasons. So when you put that in perspective, that's what we still got to go through.
Some people just asked about the changes that you made.
Yes.
Forgive me if you've already addressed this, but just
it's one of those things as a coach. We say you're going to get opportunities. You're going to get opportunities. And what is the right time to give a player an opportunity? If you give him only the games that are irrelevant, then he doesn't think you're genuine about creating opportunities and situations for him to play. So that's the first thing. Second thing, Cameron Hannekom, the number 8 tonight, played outstanding well. His first game back in about 7-8 weeks. The left winger, Stravino Jacobs, first time he's back in about 6 months from an injury. Now, again, if I leave it another week, people say, wow, why, he hasn't played for so long. Why are you leaving him out for so long? And the circumstances are very simple. I've got guys who've gone in for operations this week. One of the things that's difficult about being a coach is I'm going to tell you who's injured. I'm not going to tell you who can't play next week. Because the reality is it's a competitive industry I'm in. And I'm not going to tell you now who's going to play against Munster. Because as soon as I tell you you've got 12 injuries and 5 might not play next week, no one does that. I can't Google on the Northampton website and find out how many guys got injured last week. So the reality is I can only control what I can control. But I stress again, we want to be part of this comp. I'm loving this competition. I'd love my Christmas wish is to get all the guys that play abroad to come back and play in this competition for the South African franchises. Will Skelton was man of the match last week in Cape Town. He's an Australian. I think man of the match in the Harlequin games is a South African guy. I imagine if we could just bring those guys back to the franchises and back to, obviously Will Skelton isn't with us, but how many South African boys are playing in Japan, France, England? And if we could bring those guys back, selfishly, I suppose, as a franchise coach, that's what I would like. I would like to run out here with, RG Snyman, Jason Jenkins, Liebenberg, who plays for Leicester. The list goes on. Pollard, who plays for Leicester, Jesse Creel, who plays in, and those are only Bulls players who left us. That's before we buy an overseas-based players. And again, I want everyone to understand, we don't have the luxury of signing Kiwis and Fijians and Tongans and all that the European market have. We don't have that for a lot of reasons. One is visas, one is, money that we can pay players in rands as opposed to what they get offshore. So, we've got to compare apples with apples, not apples with pears.
Is there an appetite, or is it realistic to bring South Africans back, or is the model?
It's simple. It's I read this week that England said if you go overseas, you don't play for England. Ireland say if you play somewhere else, you don't play for Ireland. The All Blacks say if you don't play in New Zealand, you don't play for the All Blacks. We're the only country, and because we've won the World Cup, that seems to be the model that everyone wants to follow. I'm not so sure about that. I'm not so sure about that. I remember being at an after-match function at Twickenham. And I remember we played against England, and I remember the people in England talking about every number 10 in the Premiership was a foreigner. You'll remember that time, Stransky, and what did that do for England rugby in those days? Closed doors for players who wanted to play for England. So, as I said, I'm not wearing a provincial hat. I'm not a convert of allowing people to play abroad and still being able to play test rugby for your country.
More of a level playing field next season, though?
No, look, I think it'll take time. Getting closer. We're getting closer. We got Akka van der Merwe today came back and he played really well. He's a guy we got back. And we've got Wilco Lowe back home who was at Harlequins. So, we got Kubus Visa joining us from Sales Shark. So, slowly. But, what would really be the first prize is to have all those players available for our franchise. Imagine what a competition it would be if we had all those international players playing Leinster on the weekend, or La Rochelle on the weekend. So I've prepared this for many months. Is there a reason why there's a gap in the Six Nations? You know what the reason is? Because you can't play 5 weeks in a row at test level. But if you play Toulouse and Leinster and Lyon and La Rochelle, so why is that okay? With international players. If you don't have international players, why is it okay to play the same team 5 weeks against Leinster, La Rochelle, Toulouse? So, I didn't make the rule about Six Nations, but it's made because they don't want 5 test matches in a row because it's probably not feasible for any international player.
Jake, so much of the talk obviously is how you were disrespecting the competition.
Yeah.
How do you as a coach?
Now, those are your words, eh?
Not mine.
No, I'm saying I haven't disrespected.
I get it.
all.
So
Okay.
do you just tell the players to ignore that? Do you take those headlines and stick them on the wall? How do you
No,
use
I
that?
try to motivate them by saying, listen, bottom line is everyone wants opportunities. Isn't that what sport's about?
Yeah.
How many of the journos gave Harlequins a chance to beat Bordeaux today without Danny Kerr and Joe Marler? 200 test caps out. There weren't too many journos were writing about, in fact, on all the predictions, they were going to get hammered by 20 points. Isn't that the amazing thing about sport? Tiger Woods, 24 consecutive cuts in the they talk about that. He's 8 shots behind. So that's what sport's all about for me, And I didn't have to motivate them. It's opportunities. Again, as a coach, if I was a player and you kept telling me I'm going to play, and you never picked me, then what's the use of having 55 contracted players in? And that's another thing I would like you to understand. 55 contracted players, salary cap, overseas-based players not playing in South Africa. Those are not. It's not a moan. It's what we got to control. So, as I said, we've got to pay our school fees, and we'll get it right. And I've got an owner, and I've got owners that are fully aware. I mean, one of my owners was the owner of Saracens, and he knows how tough it is to get Saracens to that level. So I'm very fortunate that the powers that be that I report to understand that.
Does it irritate you a little bit? I mean, you're hardly the first coach to make changes for a European side, but this seems to, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I don't know why it was blown out of proportion, guys. I mean, I'll show you games 10, 15, 20 years ago when French sides were playing against certain sides and they didn't bring players who were supposedly their best. So it's not something new. I mean, and again, I want to reiterate, this is not the B team, the second team. This is the team I felt needed game time, based on the fact that the combinations have, none of them beat Leinster in the URC. 6 of them played in 3 Super Rugby finals. And that's how I've put it together. 2 or 3 have come back from injury, and I wasn't prepared to take a risk on certain players that I'm going to need in the back end of a competition. And I've said that from day one. One of the things that I probably erred last year was I just played the same guys over and over and over. And with it comes a double whammy. One is you get players unhappy because they never get game time. And the second thing is at the back end of the competition, you run out of players because you then have to play players who haven't played rugby for like 6 months.
What does the journey back look like for the entire?
Well, it's direct. Direct. So we got. And again, it was solved. It was solved to an extent because I think out of our 23 players, 20 got to fly direct with PA. A couple of the hangers, the extras, and a couple of the staff have to go via Doha, Emirates, Frankfurt. Where else? Yeah, I mean that's. So, but the ideal, but again, guys, and I don't want to hop on the point, but which team playing at this level flies in different aeroplanes, gets there different times? That was a model that would work. Then all test teams would do that for test matches. Is there a reason that guys climb on the same aeroplane, get on the same bus, arrive at the hotel at the same time? But that is how it would work. And so I wasn't. I'm just saying that I would prefer to have the group together, get on the bus, spend time together, appreciate what it's like to tour as a group, and give ourselves a fair chance to be 100% right.
So you'll all be back by Monday?
Well, most will be back by Monday morning. Some will be back by Monday. And again, that was also a dilemma we have because we play Munster on the weekend and we can't afford not to have a training session on Monday. So, but we'll all be back by Monday, it's like 2:00.
Jake, just in terms of the format
Yes.
of Europe,
Yes.
the ChampionsCup, is that a challenge? Does it require tinkering with the format to go from week to, around 16 quarterfinals?
Well, look, I still think that the European Cup or the EPCR or the Heineken Cup, as it was known, is still also never perfect. I mean, I remember speaking to Leo Cullen last year, and there were 5 knockout games that Leinster had to play in a row. Now this year there's a gap, and then and then there's the final, and as I said, I'm sure they will tinker with the introduction of South African sides and the introduction of logistical things that are different now. I just think we mustn't look a gift horse in the mouth. I think Investec is a South African company, and it sponsors this competition. So there's a lot that South Africa have also brought to this competition.
Do you think that's forgotten?
I don't know about that, but I'm just saying, as a patriotic South African with a company like Investec that are sponsoring it, and we mustn't take it for granted that, we've come in and we don't want to be feel like we sort of imposing on anybody. We are logistic problems, and I'm sure that the powers that be will find solutions as we go forward.
Hey, Jake, some good performances by the likes of Cameron Hanekom and Sebastian de Klerk. What are your thoughts on them going into the rest of the season?
Yeah, look, I was very happy with them, considering that Cameron's been out for such a long time as well. The impact he made, literally, and he, as I said, still a bit rusty, but him to play in a game like that was important for us as well.
Excellent, Jake. Yeah, I think 90% of everything has been said from the floor there. I just got one question. Do you sit tomorrow and the day after and analyze this game and look at things, or do you just park this game for what it was and then look forward to what's coming?
No, you'll have to analyze. I mean, there were things that happened tonight that we probably haven't seen before from a defensive point of view. Yeah, and they were, as I said, there are probably some attacking things that we could have done a bit differently. So we won't just chuck it away. I mean, we'll use whatever we can out of this game to make sure we get better young.
But you got to put a big focus in on Munster next week.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, coaches have already started. How it works with us is we plan a week in advance. So the coaches would have already done their dossier and their homework on Munster already, considering Munster didn't play this weekend. So, I mean, the footage and all the stuff we probably needed would have been finished by yesterday afternoon.
Jack, you said that some guys needed operations. Are you at liberty to say who's out and who's not yet at this stage?
Yeah, Ashfaq, I mean, you heard what I said. I mean, I don't think it's the way you should do it, is basically tell people a week out who could or could not play, you know. I think any team would appreciate that you try and keep your selection, you know, as close as possible to the fact that, you know, things change during the week. And I would rather, you know, make sure that I can find out when I get back who's recovered, you know, who's gone in, how the operations look, etc., etc.
Well, were there some guys who did well enough tonight to be considered for selection for Munster?
Yeah, Ashfaq, I mean, as it stands, I was saying, there are a lot of guys that are considering playing, because I don't know how many of the guys I left behind are going to be ready after, you know, a week of rehab.